Hello and welcome to Fellowship in Essential Oils. It's Adam and Liz. How are you today, Liz?
I'm very well, thanks, Adam. How are you today?
Very well. And today we're going to be exploring another one of the evergreen trees. We've been doing a few recently we looked at the firs, we've looked at the pines, and today we're looking at cypress, aren't we?
Yes, exactly. And of course, you mentioned to me earlier, and it hadn't occurred to me, many different types of cypress. So this one is Cupressus sempervirens. Sempervirens, always living. So its
Yes.
Latin name means, yes.
And we're having a bit of a conversation about whether they have leaves or needles, and you did a quick run outside. Where
I
do we
would
get the
like
oil
to,
from?
yes, so there's lots of different types of cypress. This one's Cupressus leylandii, which surrounds our house and is a general source of contempt all of the time. And we were saying, doesn't really have needles, doesn't really have leaves. It has gnarly ends of branches, which Adam thought was very funny, but I think is true. Green, gnarly ends of branches. So that is cypress, what cypress looks like.
So obviously, neither of us are professional botanists because we don't know the actual name for it. But if anyone wants to leave a comment underneath and let us know what they're actually called, but that's what we're talking about now. The cypress family of trees is actually really generous, and although we often think of cypress essential oil coming from the leaves, there are many cypress trees that give us oil from their wood. So in North America, there is arbor vitae and there is nootka. In Japan, there is hiba, there is sugi, there's hinoki, and in Australia, there's a beautiful white cypress that gives an oil from the wood, and an amazing one called Australian blue cypress, which actually gives us this stunning blue essential oil as well. Now, the wood oils from the cypress family, we might have to dive into another day because we've got so much to talk about with just these leaves, haven't we?
Blue cypress, a cypress.
Yeah, I believe
Is
so.
it? Oh, well, we'll have to look at that.
Yeah,
I do
yeah.
like blue cypress. And actually, when we were on the masterclass this week, we were talking about how we tend to buy oils and then forget about them. About 3 masterclasses ago, I was inspired to buy Sugi oil. It's sat on there ever since and not done anything with it. So I need to get Sugi out and start working with it.
Yes, we might have to do an episode on the Japanese cypresses, and that will get you working on them.
Yeah, it would. I know nothing about them, so that would be interesting.
Yeah. So tell me, cypress for you, how do you commonly use it with yourself and other people physically?
So I think that it's kind of a hard oil to put into physical boxes. Like normally I can say, oh, this is an antibacterial oil, blah, 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 a pain oil. Cypress is kind of a bit of everything, but its big areas of abilities are on water and on transition, I think. So times of like either stasis where we're feeling very stagnant and stuck. So we can obviously get into stuck emotional situations like anger or grief, but also in terms of the stasis within the body, so sluggish circulation, sluggish digestion, constipation, that kind of stuff. All of that is really well worked with cypress, but really its big ability is as a diuretic. It's not a hugely strong diuretic like juniper or fennel are. I mean, they are very, very strong, but it is very good when you have like stasis of liquid. So things like puffy eyes, cellulite, when you have like your periods and you get bloated beforehand, edema in the feet, any kind of lymphatic disorder, all of those things work really, really well with cypress. And because we're talking about like stasis and moving stuff, then that works on circulation. So things like arthritis, rheumatism, where they're kind of stiff, lethargy. In terms of skin, it's very astringent. So it's very good for cleaning your skin. And I will talk about that separately. Yeah, if you've got very greasy skin or grimy skin, So I often talk about where I used to live. I used to live on junction 10 of the M6, which to anybody outside of England is probably the second worst junction in England. Always full of like traffic jams and petrochemicals and just really polluted area. That's where I used to live. And so, yes, it really affected my lungs, but my skin was vile. It was always dirty all of the time. And Cypress is really good for that. And the other thing, so I talked about skin earlier. The other thing that I find is really good is if we don't necessarily work under them so much now. But when I was younger, I used to work in an office under a fluorescent strip. And when you're in front of computers as well, it happens that you kind of get bombarded with positive ions, which can make your aura very sluggish and nasty, as well as not doing great things for your skin. And Cypress is really good at neutralizing those positive ions. So if you're somebody who works in, like, I was going to say Curry's, but that might not mean anything to anybody, but like a TV store, electrical store, or like a gaming store where there's this continual noise and static and stuff. And or if you're like me and you're an empath and you walk into them and you're like, whoa, I can't bear it, then Cypress is really good for when you get home, you just like clean off all of the different layers.
Yeah, I think the key word when it comes to Cypress, whether it be the metaphysical or just the physical, is definitely flow.
Yeah.
Whenever there's an issue with any kind of flow in the body, I know people that have had, even if there's like I call it an overflow, so heavy sweaters can actually benefit from Cypress. And some women with a heavy menstrual flow have found that it gets the flow back to how it should be anywhere in the body.
Yes, agreed. And in Chinese medicine, we say that it's ruled by the metal element and by the water element. And so water has so many different meanings when you start to think of it from a metaphysical point of view. Of course, we're talking about the water in the body, water balance in particular, but also how we cry, how we sweat, as you quite rightly say, but also the way that water is so flexible and can really work with obstacles, can find its small way through and kind of move into small areas and flow through. So always, like when you're thinking about a water element, you're talking about an oil that's very good at being able to kind of do unorthodox things. So if you think about how a river flows, or perhaps like a brook and there's like a dam, the stones won't stop it. You know, if it was a solid thing, it wouldn't get through, but because it's so flexible and it's got malleable state in terms of atoms, it can always get through, and it will always find a different way around stuff. So in terms of like when we're talking about stagnancy, you might think about situations that you're caught in and you can't think of a way around them. Water energy things are very good for kind of seeing unorthodox ways around. And I'll post a link to it in the description, but I used Cypress really a lot in lockdown, because it was a really challenging time for everybody in the world. It's a really challenging time for me because I was homeschooling a little one, and my other I couldn't see my other two children, and one of them of course was on the front line as a paramedic. So it was a very difficult time, and Cypress was really, really helpful for not only like doing the protection in terms of the lungs and all of that stuff, because the metal element rules the lungs, but also in terms of understanding that although we were confined in a small space, actually that the space that you're confined in is your mind space. And Cypress is very good at being able to say, no, it's not a small box, it's an enormous box, you've got so much space, and looking at all the different ways of navigating those psychological challenges that were in lockdown.
Yeah, you know, one of the other key things that I think Cypress is absolutely amazing for is any form of grief. And the Greeks had a beautiful story about the origin of the cypress tree, and it was about a beautiful young prince by the name of Cypressios. Now, Saprasios would go out into the forest each day with his stag deer, and this deer had been his companion ever since he was born. And one day they met the god Apollo. Now, over time, Apollo and Saprasios became really close and ended up spending a lot of time together in the forest each day. So one day in particular, they were throwing javelins to see who could throw it the furthest, because that's what boys did before we had computer games, you see. Anyway, Saprasios took one of his javelins, looked behind him to make sure Apollo was watching, threw it with all his might, trying to throw it further than he'd ever thrown it before, and it went straight through the heart of his stag deer. He wasn't looking where he was aiming, and the deer fell to the ground and died straight away. Now, Saprasios was so close to this stag deer that he couldn't beat a bear on the earth without that deer. So he asked Apollo, the god, please let me go into the underworld, let me be with my stag deer. But Apollo, who had fallen so deeply for Saprasios, didn't want to lose him either. And so in the end, what he did is he turned him into the cypress tree. And so the roots would go deeply into the underground to be with the stag deer. But if you look at the cypress tree, it often has that pointing up to the heavens, up to Olympus. So it's there honoring the gods as well. And you'll find in places, especially Eastern European cemeteries, cypress trees are constantly around that different, around cemeteries as that honoring of, allowing that grieving and that passing and that type of thing as well. I've had an experience with a client of mine who she had a child who was a stillborn, and with other children, and she was dealing with a funeral and all these different things that she was taking care of. She hadn't actually had that chance to just grieve and cry. And she said to me, I'm not able to cry. And so I just gifted her a diffuser with some cypress. And I find the cypress essential oil, it's quite a subtle one as well, but she just had that going. And she just found that later on that day, the tears suddenly started to started to fall. And so just like we've been talking about blood and perspiration and menstruation and even lymphatics and all those different fluids in the body, it is really great for the tears as well. So you may think of cypress as a great oil around death, but like Liz was saying just a moment ago, grief. We often hear the word grief and we're like, oh, we've lost a loved one. But during COVID, we all experienced different grief because it's the loss of something. And we lost freedoms, we lost opportunities. Some people didn't get to go to special weddings, or they had someone pass and they couldn't travel to see them. There was just maybe you're grieving about the fact that you didn't get to go on your island holiday like you did. And we're not just during COVID, but we constantly have moments of grief where we lose something. And I think Cypress is a really great consort for you whenever that happens.
Yeah, and I said earlier how it's ruled by the metal element and the water element. And again, last night we talked about meridians and how the flow of energy goes through the body in Chinese medicine, and that meridians work in tandem. So the metal element rules the partnership between the lungs and the large intestine or the colon. And so we think about how when we breathe in and then we excrete out. Metal energy has its own season. Its season is autumn. And this idea of we start to really think about what's important to us, what we can lose. What do we need to let go of? Like the trees lose their leaves. But also we have this like relationship with the large intestine about waste. What are we holding on to? Again, we're talking about how we talked about it's very good for flow and things like retained water, constipation. When this energy is imbalanced, things flow away easily. But when we have an imbalance in this structure, we get respiratory problems, but we also get problems with very slowed down digestion too. And this idea of letting go was really important, I think, to the medicine that I was using in COVID, was because we had to learn, well, there's only certain things I can control. There's not many things I can control, actually. One of the things I can control, though, is my thoughts. And that was powerful for me to be able to think about that. But of course, we also had to think about, well, so many structures have fallen away, so many of our routines, so many ways that we used to manage our lives have been changed. which ones don't I need now? You know, which I need to make new ones, but not for everything. And we didn't, did we? We went, well, these are the important things. These are what I need to do. And that was absolutely the medicine of the plant, really. It was interesting to see. And you talked about Greek mythology, and the god of medicine as Aesclepius, and the cypress was his sacred tree. And so we still mention him today when a doctor, maybe a nurse, but certainly a doctor, takes the Hippocratic oath, makes a promise to Aesclepius, to Hygeia and Panacea, that they will do no harm and that they will act in the way that those had for the best of people. But medicine was really very different back in ancient Greece. And this was a big part of my Melissa training, that the priestesses were involved in working with the Aesclepians at Epidaurus, which was Aesclepius's sanctuary. So if you imagine a beautiful temple surrounded on all sides with trees, cypress trees, and by day the people would sit under the cypress tree and contemplate the dreams that they wanted to have in the on the night for the god Aesclepius to speak to them. And it was said that they would be whispered from snakes. And Cypress has very snake energy about it. On every level, because snakes come up, snakes come up. And if you don't know the story of Aesclepius, he again was, funnily enough, Apollo comes up again. He was the son of Apollo. We don't really know who his mother was. There was various candidates, but we know that he was born, he was probably the first Caesarean. His name Aesclepius means to cut. That's what it means. And Apollo taught him healing in all different ways, and he gave him to the goddess Artemis, who was the keeper of the herbal wisdom, who taught him about herbs. And then he was given to Chiron, and eventually he had learned more than Artemis, more than Chiron, and knew more about healing than anybody else. And he was worshipped as a god in his own lifetime when he was a man. And it was said that eventually he was so clever that he was able to defeat Hades, and he created this magical elixir of herbs, but also venom of a snake and venom from a gorgon's head, so like Medusa. And this magical venom was able to bring people back from the dead, it was said. And you might ask yourself, well, how did you know how to do that? And it was said that a snake whispered the secrets into his ears. And eventually Hades went, well, this is all very well, but what's going to happen to the underworld if he keeps doing this? Everything's going to fall apart. Zeus, you need to sort it out. Zeus said, right, I will stop him. And he did that by giving him a thunderbolt to the chest, killed him. And he put him up into the stars, into a constellation called Ophiuchus, which is what we call the 13th zodiac sign now. But you can see a man holding a snake. And so this idea of the snakes is really closely aligned to Cypress. And this idea of shedding one's skin, of course, of the Ouroboros. So the snake swallowing its tail as a continual cycle of death and rebirth, death and rebirth. But also this unique relationship with death that Cypress has. It used to be grown in churchyards because you could sit under it and it was so good. But what's really interesting is if you look at it from the point of view of chemistry, we're actually going to a science place. You can say, right, well, most of it's alpha pinene. You've got a bit of delta 3 carine, and you've got some beta pinene, and then cedrol. So delta 3 carine and alpha pinene are both incredibly good for sleep. So they have a hypnotic quality. So they help get you to sleep earlier, but also extend latent sleep. So you sleep for longer. And then, of course, think about how Cedrol is really kind of sedative as well. So you can imagine sitting under these trees all day, just breathing. No wonder they slept so well. It really kind of makes me think of how good camping is for you. You know, you go out, you sleep amongst these trees, and you really do sleep well, don't you? So that's another perhaps arcane thing to do with Cypress that people don't really think of, but particularly it's extremely good for psychic dreaming, lucid dreaming, intuitive dreaming.
I'm still stuck on this idea of people who had the luxury of spending all day sitting under a cypress tree contemplating what they wanted to dream that night. I'm like,
well,
how do I get to live that type of life?
I know, how great would that be? And the temple apparently was on top of a labyrinth. So I'll say that for Joy Bowles in case she's watching. So on top of a labyrinth, because she's fascinated by labyrinths, filled with snakes. Now, these snakes are fascinating in their own right from the point of view of being a Melissa. So Melissa work with bees and snakes and spiders. But Melissa plant obviously holds the wisdom of the bee. Cypress holds the wisdom of the snake. So these snakes, I don't know how they know what these snakes were, but they do. So this snake is called something like Senihan longissimus, but anyway, Aesclepian snake. If you Google that, you'll be able to see. And when you look at the snake, its markings are covered in honeycomb. So I was like, how so weird how that happens. And then you think, yeah, but that's where the symbolism's woven together, isn't it? They've looked and they've gone, that's a snake that knows something about bees. Very odd. So yeah, and it was said that you would dream on the night and that Aesclepius would give you answers to your dreams. And then you would go to a dream interpreter and they would weave the symbol or unpick the symbology of the dream to give you various interpretations for you to go away and think, oh, yes, maybe that's a thing. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. So based on what we've been talking about, let me maybe share some ideas of some practical uses of Cypress. I think it's going to be a beautiful one to diffuse when you get home at the end of the day with that alpha pinene and the beta pinene and the other chemistry you're talking about. Very, very relaxing. Metaphysically, it's also going to let you just surrender the day. You know, think about how often we hear someone come through the front door and we're like, oh, I'm about to pay for the bad day they just had. And Cypress is a really nice one for just. And, you know, we've referred to Shinrin Yoku, the practice of forest bathing, of spending time out in nature and the benefits that has for the body, the mind, and the spirit. But when we can't be out in nature, diffusing big tree oils, whether it be cypress or pine or spruce or fir or anything like that, can actually help because of that alpha pinene and beta pinene. So having that around. But then I think it would be great to even carry on into the bedroom and have that diffusing at night. And we've been talking a lot recently about different oils to put on the soles of your feet to make you dream. For me, gardenia is the ultimate one. Juniper berry is second. And then under that, things like Buddhawood, vetiver, they can all be really nice at helping you kind of just remember your dreams a little bit more. So I think it can be really used in a diffusional or on the soles of the feet in that way at night. When we're talking about, you know, Liz was talking about Chinese medicine, the metal and the water elements. In our book, Gifts of Essential Oils, myself and Vanessa Jean, we kind of where the oil is gifted from. We talk about it coming from, different parts of the plant and connecting that with different elements. And we found a really close synergy between anything that's gifted from a needle or a leaf and the element of air and the mind. And think about how often we get caught on something. We're fixating on something. And I even think of conversations I've had with people in the evening where something happened at work and they're on and on and oh, I'm going to tomorrow, and almost we take that into the bedroom because we're so annoyed and frustrated. And I think Cypress, if you find that you're kind of, our thoughts go round and round in circles sometimes. And I think that's a challenge, maybe sitting down with some Cypress, and even writing out, even if you're not a journal writer or anything like that, because when we think, our thoughts are always bubbling around in our head. Whereas when we have to write them out or even speak them to another person, we linearize them, and it stops that kind of machination going around in that type of way. A really final, beautiful place where I think Cypress comes in really nicely is after the full moon. So obviously on the new moon, we sit and we contemplate, what do I want to bring in this lunar cycle? We kind of work towards that and build towards that. And the full moon, that's magic day. So that's when we kind of commune with the universe and go, universe, bring this into manifestation. Then we've got all this waning moon until we get the dark moon and then the new lunar cycle. What do we do then? Well, a lot of people were like, well, I've asked for this. Where is it? 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 And Cypress is a really good one just to allow you to surrender, but also to be open. Your responsibility in that second half of the moon, I feel, is one where you need to wait for the universe to deliver, but be open and kind of working towards that at the same time. So you don't just sit back on the couch and wait for, the lover or the pay rise to knock on the door. What you're doing is you're going, I wonder how the universe will surprise and delight me today. And I'm going to create opportunities and seize opportunities to bring what I want to manifest in. And Cypress, with that flow, it can get energy flowing in our lives, not just in our thoughts, but throughout our lives to help get this magic flowing in, see transitions and things happening in our life and start seizing that opportunity. So waning moon energy, I find is really great for Cypress as well.
I forgot what I was going to say. I was so engrossed in that. I will share, maybe it's a related story, maybe it's not a related story, or two actually. So the first thing is that when I was writing the Melissa book, often people will come and say to me, will you have a read of this? Will you have a try of this oil, whatever? And I have to be very disciplined of saying, I'm sorry, I can't. I can't read your book because I can't be distracted from what I'm doing, especially if I'm editing, because I really don't want your ideas in there. I can't experience your oils because I'm being true to in this monogamous relationship with this wretched thing that went on forever and ever, amen. And this happened with a lovely lady called Frances Bartlett, who is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. She's like a fairy. B, the most incredible cellist, and C, a really incredible distiller. And D, also synesthetic. So like me, she hears essential oils as musical notes, hence that we have these bizarre conversations that probably nobody else would understand. So she said, Liz, I've got, she sends me like voice text on WhatsApp. Liz, I've got to send you some oils. I was like, I really want the oils, but don't want the oils. Don't give me the oils. So she gave me these lists of what she was going to send, and one of them was Cade, which I'm no secret, I really don't like Cade. So I was like, oh great, we're sending Cade, right? Well, I've got an excuse not to do that. And Cypress, and I went, no, you can't send me Cypress. You can't send me Cypress. And she said, why? And I said, because the work that I'm doing, the snakes are going to appear, and then I'll lose the medicine energy, snake. So I was like, she was like, no, well, I'll just send it to you, and when you're ready, it's like putting bloody heroin in front of an addict, isn't it? As if that top was going to stay up that. So came, and her oils are so beautiful. She plays the cello as they're distilling them, just gorgeous. Of course, I went the next night. Oh, there were snakes everywhere. I was dreaming snakes. There were snakes on the telly. I saw a snake out in the woods. I was like, no way, you open. Oh, bloody hell. So yeah, no, that once you understand the snake energy, it does come through. But the snake energy is really like quite, they reckon shamanically there's around about 300 different meanings of snake. So that's a really big book to be done. But the small ones, we can say, well, the snake sheds its skin. The snake doesn't have ears, did you know? Snakes don't have ears. They have little bones that vibrate from any kind of movement, so they can feel earthquakes and stuff. But they're extremely aware of changes in environment. But also the real powerful message of the snake is patience and understanding that there will be enough. So if somebody's got money worries or any kind of situation where they think, oh, I'm worried about not being maybe not being enough, but they're not being enough. That sounded the same when I said it. I meant like, you're not enough, or I won't have enough. So if you think about like when a snake is hunting, it's really still, and it's like there's no rush. I can see that mouse. I'm not going to move. Not going to move. I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait. Well, it's going that way, but I know it will come back. I know it will come back my way. I'll wait. And when you were talking about like the whole manifestation thing, it's like that, you know, just know that it's coming. Know that it's coming and be absolute. I can work on something else and know that it's coming. That's very Cypress medicine.
Almost trust the flow.
Absolutely, go with the flow. That's exactly what we were talking about. The flow of the universe will unfold. It's all about flow. And then I don't know whether it's related or not, but I'll share it. So I'm writing a book about myrrh at the moment, and within that book, there's lots of stories that are not obvious, that are hidden in what's called apocrypha. So apocrypha are books that were religious documents that were written around the time of the Bible, but were not chosen to go into the Bible, but still have like these deep truths. And there's a most beautiful book that's recently been translated by a gentleman whose name is Brent Landau, I think, and he is a professor of divinity at Harvard University. And he had heard about this thing called the Cave of Treasures. And so the Cave of Treasures is, we're going off tangent now, very much related to what's called the life of Adam and Eve. There's all sorts of stories, again, we'll talk about this in the Myrrh book, of what happened to Adam and Eve after they were expelled from the garden. But also, when they were expelled, that God gave Adam and Eve, according to Jewish apocrypha and Christian apocrypha, gold, frankincense and myrrh to take from the garden and to place into a safe place. And this book that he's translated is a 2nd century apocrypha, they think, and he translated from a 5th century version of it. Anyway, so it's written about the Magi. And in this book, the Magi are kings, but they're not like the kings that we know that come to the stable. They're from a place, a long forgotten place called Shia, which is in the east, which translators think probably means China. And that in this book, they're not really, they are priests, but a different kind of priests. And there is explicit in the book that their name Magi means the fact that they are silent for a week before they do this ritual that they have to do, which I'll talk about in a minute. So these come from a long lineage of kings, and they are direct descendants from Seth. So Adam and Eve's 3rd child after Cain and Abel were killed. Seth came along, and so this is like a religious lineage of priests, and that they are guardians of this treasure in the cave, and they're told that each month they have to go down from the down to the mountain into this particular lake to bathe that's surrounded by magical trees. This is the point I'm going to make. The magical trees are all conifer trees, and one of which is named as Cypress. And they have this bathing in this magical bath, and they go up and they worship on their knees with their hands upraised in silence for 7 days, looking for a star. So they're told that you must do this every month, and on the 25th, you must do this every month on the 25th, and then you must go down into the city and then get the voices back, not silent then, and tell everybody about the prophecy, so that should one of you die, your son knows what to do and he will automatically do it. Anyway, lo and behold, of course, the one day they're down in the water, surrounded by the trees, and they see this incredible light. And it's so beautiful. You must read it. And it says that this light is so bright that the sun and moon are pale in comparison. And they watch, and the light goes up the hill to the cave, and so they follow it up, and it's settled on a pillar in front of the cave, and they see that the star has a man inside. And then they follow this star with a man inside, and you go along this journey with these magi. But it's lovely that every time they go down into this lake, surrounded by these trees, magical things happen to them. So I thought I'd share that, because we'll talk about that. I talk about that a lot in my Mer book. It's really beautiful. But I thought, it's really relevant here as well, that this kind of lucid dream happens to them in the pond, in the lake.
I was wondering if that was a documentation of one of the very first UFO sightings on the world. There's a glowing light with a man in it.
There's a man in
Definitely
the
a man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so you're saying there were magical trees around, and Cypress was one of them. Do they list what the other trees were? I'm curious about that, and I'm sure other people are as well.
Let me see if I can get it easily. 1 second.
Now I'm testing you on that. While this is looking up that... Oh, go on. You've got it?
No, go on. I'm just going to look in my Kindle book. Go on. Keep talking.
Okay, while you're looking at that, I was going to say, we've been talking a lot about the grief and the letting go and that type of thing. I'd also like to kind of present the idea that Cypress, on the flip side of that, it's about emotional liberation. The animal guide that I actually work with when I work with Cypress is the penguin. And when I talk about penguin, I'm often saying, well, can a penguin fly? And everyone's like, oh, no, they can't. It's a bird that can't fly. Well, they can't fly through the air. They definitely fly through the water. The water, of course, is that emotional realm. And so obviously, in order to be liberated of those negative emotions, whether it be grief or anything else that's kind of stuck within the body and stopping you from moving forward. If you are finding that you are stuck in anything in your life, that's what you'll see us repeating week after week as we talk about these different oils. What it does physically, it's going to do emotionally as well. And guess what? Cypress is going to help everything flow in your body, everything help flow in your life, and help your emotions and your thoughts flow really nicely as well. So if you feel that you just want to get over a breakup, get over a pain, get over an old job, break those types of things, a really interesting thing would be on the dark moon, the final night of the lunar cycle, write down what you want to get rid of, put it in a container of water, pop 3 drops of Cypress in there, and then freeze it. And it's almost like freezing off that unwanted energy. And it's a really great thing to do. Don't do it on the full moon. The full moon's about birthing new magic into the world. So what you focus on, you're going to bring out there. But on the dark moon, the night before the new moon, it's a really great time to be liberated, letting go. It's like New Year's Eve. Don't want any more of that. Let's set resolutions for the new. How'd you go? Did you find the other?
Just that second. One? So the book itself is called The Revelation of the Magi. And the ritual is in chapter 5. And actually, so not all conifer trees. Now you've maybe look. So the 7 trees stood over it: an olive, a vine, a myrtle, a cypress, an orange, a cedar, and a juniper. And for some reason, a cypress is in brackets after a myrtle. So I wonder if they think that's the same thing in here. But anyway, I haven't looked at that. But anyway, so there they are. So we bathed in a certain spring that was on the foothills of the mountain. It is called the Spring of Purification. And that mountain was altogether incomparably more beautiful and desirable than all the mountains in our land, and the smell of all sweet spices effused from it, and the dew that was sprinkled was a sweet smell.
Divine, beautiful.
It's a really beautiful book, The Revelation of Magi.
Wow. Now, just before we wrap up, we're going to do a bit of a beauty corner, because you did mention a little bit about Cypress and skin. I must admit, one thing that I was gifted from my late father was these bags under the eyes. It doesn't matter what I do, my liver's in top shape, my kidneys are in top shape, I've had every test, but it's just a bit of a hereditary thing. But one thing that can help a little bit, and I know other people have had great success, is Cypress diluted at a low level. Of course, we're not going to put anything in our eyes, but dabbed with, usually the ring finger around that area can really help with a little bit of bagginess and that type of thing as well. But how do you like to use Cypress for the skin, Liz?
So as I said about cleansing earlier, so I pretty much always put it in a cleanser for people. And if somebody's having like a deep cleansing mask as well, it'll always go in. But as you said, puffy eyes. But I will share, when you learn to do facial massage, there's actually a special massage that you can do for puffy eyes because you're actually doing lymphatic drainage. So we certainly don't want to drag this area because, of course, it's really fragile. So we're kind of marching our fingers, if you like, just like that. And as you notice, it will actually move under your fingers. So what we want to do is take it down the side of the face, which I'm not going to do. But take it down the side of the face, and then it enters into the lymphatic system here in the subclavian. So, which is a bit further down actually on the collarbone. So we're kind of just like pushing it really carefully. And as you say, I would use cypress, celery seed, and angelica root to do that. And then just kind of, so we would do this maybe 3 or 4 times, and all you're doing is actually moving that fluid away from that area and draining it into the subclavian. But also greasy skin, acne, that kind of thing. Anything where you've got to cut through grime, really.
Yeah, but as I said, when you are doing that around the eye area, if everyone just touches their skin on their face and then touches the skin under your eye, you'll notice that is a little bit more delicate there. Even, when you're moisturizing, we often say that, around that eye area, I call it the panda bone. If you're a panda, you'd have the black circles there. You shouldn't be putting too much moisturizer on there. And that's why you often see different products that are like an eye gel or something a bit lighter. So be really light in touch and in product use around there to prevent that as well. Well, Cypress, I think we've given lots of different practical applications for it. It is such it doesn't get, again, it's not probably an all-star one that gets mentioned a lot, but when you kind of break it down as we have today, I think there's lots of practicalities that it can be used for.
Yeah, I really love cypress oil. I use it a lot.
And now we're going to have our next masterclass. We're going to have it near the end of the year. We're kind of going to theme this one a little bit, and you'll see some of the oils that we talk about in the upcoming episodes to be all around that. As we know, I hate to use the C word, but Christmas is coming. And Christmas means, the winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. It's summer, but, it's a big time of immunity challenges when we're all lumped together in rooms and that type of thing. So we're going to kind of look at some oils that are really great for that. So we're going to theme our next masterclass. We'll have the link details down below. And you'll notice that we're kind of trending with those different oils that are really good for the winter solstice, immunity, Christmas, all those holiday festivities, and a little bit of summer solstice for the Southern Hemisphere as well. But we hope you can join us for that masterclass as well. Is there anything else that we've missed out on that we need to shamelessly self-promote today, Liz?
Actually, I wasn't going to say anything, but since you say shamelessly self-promote, as I say, I do use Cypress an awful lot. And if it's of interest to anybody, I do have a recipe hub of around about 500 recipes committed to video. So with me talking about this is why I use this oil, this is how we've done that. It's called the Recipe Hub. And if you want to access it, I think it's £5.99 a month. So it's not expensive. You just like rent it. And if you go down on my link tree, you'll see a link to go and access that. But I think there's something like 15 different recipes in there using cypress, and quite a lot, I think, if I remember rightly, about using it in hospice care.
Remember, if you haven't had a chance to check out our link trees, these are our menus with all the different things and resources that we've built up over the years as well. I've been talking recently about my newsletter. I send out a newsletter each week because we tend to go from oil to oil to oil to oil. And as I say, you become an essential oil slut. You can't remember their names, what they're good for, and they just all sit around not getting used properly. So I teach a bit of essential oil monogamy and talk about one oil a week and encourage people to really try and use that oil as much as you can each week. And by the end of the year, you've really got to know over 50 oils. So you can subscribe to that. My website, which is just adambarralet.com, is also on my link tree, and you can subscribe to my newsletter there. So whether it be the Recipe Hub, whether it be my newsletter, we've got lots of things beyond what you get to see each week with this podcast as well. So please jump in there and have a bit of a look and see. And we're always updating that with new online events or new offerings and different things as well, aren't we, Liz?
We are indeed, and as you just as a reminder, if anybody does want to do the Cypress meditation, there are a couple of sound glitches in it. I was listening to it this morning, and I was like, "Oh," but the information in it is really good. It was very moving to listen to. So yeah, I'll post that in our description too.
Well, we could probably sit here all day and talk about Cypress, but in the true essence of Cypress, we've got to keep everything flowing, and we're going to get going. So until next week, we'll see you then. Thanks for joining us on Fellowship of Essential Oils. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.